Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 124 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. We all know that each of us has a different style and energy when it comes to teaching yoga. But how much does your personality type influence how you share yoga and run your yoga business? And on the flip side, what traits or qualities might we see in our students depending on their personality type? And how does that influence their experience of yoga? Learning our personality type is a great way to come to a compassionate understanding of who we are. And that's why I've invited Sarajane Case, an Enneagram expert, to share with us more about the Enneagram assessment and what the different personality types are. Sarah also reveals some tips on how you can harness your personality characteristics in your own yoga business and in your life. Whether you've been curious about personality types and how they influence your work and your business and your life, or if you've heard about the Enneagram assessment before and you're curious to find out more, this episode is going to be a really interesting listen. And as a side note, if you want to see how an Instagram account can really be the main thing of a business, make sure to go and follow Sarajane on Instagram. Her Enneagram and Coffee account for sure, but also her personal account, and the links for those will be in our show notes. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant working for yoga teachers. And this podcast was created for you, dear yoga teacher, so that you can connect to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported. Because I know that it's not just stretching and mudras all of the time. It can be tricky being a yoga teacher, teaching yoga, running a business. So I want to say a huge thank you to you for doing this work. I know that it is work, and I am hoping that in some way this podcast can support you through that work. Make sure to check out our show notes. They have clickable timestamps if you feel like you want to go back and find something easily. Go to theconnectedyogateacher.com/124 to find this episode. Before we meet Sarajane, let's hear our hot tip of the week from Schedulicity.
Hey Connected Yoga Teachers, this is Shannon with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Schedulicity lets you easily visualize your plans and make changes that you don't have to write down or try to remember. Your students can always check your available classes anytime and stay up to date with changes you make. If you change a class that students have already enrolled in, Schedulicity will automatically offer to send them an alert. If you're experimenting with finding the most popular attendance times in your area, it's easy to look back and examine the success of your past classes. When your students realize they can trust you to keep them connected online in this way, they'll never be shocked if your ideal schedule happens to change. After all, flexibility is key.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity, for all that you do to make our life a lot easier as yoga teachers. Okay, Connected Yoga Teachers, let's dive in and meet Sarajane. Sarajane Case is the founder of Enneagram Coffee. She works with people through online courses, in-person workshops, and business masterminds. Sarajane uses the Enneagram as a tool for self-exploration, expression, and entrepreneurship. And she helps people build and nurture their relationships with themselves. After graduating with a bachelor's in photojournalism, Sarajane spent almost a decade working as a photographer before transitioning into the work she does today. And if you follow her on Instagram, now I know why her photos look so amazing. Sarajane is also a writer, a speaker, a coach, and a really fun fact, Sarajane runs an amazing Instagram account, like I said. And she really focuses in on and does really well with the Instagram stories to connect with her audience. And I ask her about how things went viral overnight with her Enneagram and Coffee. So make special note of that if you're wanting to up your game with Instagram. We talk all about this and more in the interview, so let's dive right in. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Sarajane. It's great to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
I am super excited for many reasons, but I think the biggest reason was was watching you talk about the Enneagram and heard you say that it was really about looking at ourselves with compassion as we're looking at this. So that's the biggest thing that I'm excited to bring to our listeners, as well as just an introduction to like what's the Enneagram. But before we get there, I know that you practice yoga, and I recently heard you talk about how you had this moment in a yoga class where the yoga teacher said something. Do you want to share that story with our listeners and tell us who you are, what you do, and anything else about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Sarajane Case. I'm the creator of Enneagram Coffee. It's an Instagram account and a podcast. And we do educational services and things like that on the Enneagram, and a speaker and a writer. And so that's kind of my main thing. And then I think what you're talking about, right, is that my religion story.
Yeah.
And for me, I grew up very religious. I grew up very devout, and I did my first kind of foray, or I can't even say the word right, but like my first step into yoga, several years ago, and it was at the end of my religious journey. And I went into a yoga class, and the yoga teacher said, "Thank yourself for being here, for showing up today." And it was this realization that I'd never thanked myself for anything in my life. Like everything that I'd ever done was always about giving credit to God or to the universe or to my religion or my church, and everything was about everyone else. Any good thing that I did, I was to give credit away from myself. I was trained to do that. And this was the first time that I was able to really thank myself. And I realized like, oh, you woke up, you decided to come here, you decided to connect with yourself today in this way. And that's okay. It's okay to be proud of yourself for that.
I love this story because I'm guessing that your yoga teacher, was saying different things and then has different things that they say all of the time. And then this was a really profound moment for you.
Mhm.
I wonder, did you share that with your yoga teacher?
I didn't. But yeah, it's interesting to think about too, because at this point, I think it's probably been 7 to 9 years, somewhere in there, since I've been doing yoga, and I've gone to so many classes at this point. I know that's a pretty common thing to say, but for me, it changed my life, and I think that like people don't know, like she probably says that almost every class, and she may never really know that impacted me in that way, which is kind of sad and kind of beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I think that this is often the case that our students are in their own, whatever is going on in their life. And then sometimes we hear this snippet of a story of how words can really impact them. So, what got you interested in looking at the Enneagram? Where did that start? And what is the Enneagram?
Yeah. So the Enneagram is this kind of ancient personality typing tool. And, you can compare it to something like Myers-Briggs or DISC or, anything like that, Skill Finder, except for everything about it is internal. It's your motivations, it's your basic fears, it's your coping mechanisms. And so all of these things, like most personality typing tests, are telling you what your personality looks like or how that impacts your life. But the Enneagram is talking about like what drives you and what motivates you, and then how can that show up in your life in the form of mechanisms that you use to get through the world. And it's a lot more engaging. It shows you your levels of health. It shows you where you go when you're stressed and when you need rest. And there's just a lot. It's very in depth, and it's just really beautiful. I got interested in the Enneagram because friends of ours were talking about how it had impacted their marriage and just helped them to understand one another better. Uh, and I think that it can be really profound in a relationship because you're learning the motivations. And so you see your partner's actions, and then you have the information of this is how that impacts. Like this comes from this place. Like this comes from your childhood wound that made you feel this way, that brings certain things up for you. And then therefore you are not doing the dishes today. like so you're able to kind of bring everything into context instead of I think what often happens in work environments and parent relationships and relationships to our partners is that we're looking for someone to blame. we're looking for someone to be the wrong one and someone to be the right one. And what the Enneagram shows us is that we're all just trying our best with what we have and what we've been given.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. And I can see where this would really help in a relationship. Like sometimes we think, why is this person acting like this? They're doing this thing. And what I see a lot of also on your Instagram, the Enneagram and Coffee, and I'll link to that in our show notes, is that people feel like, oh yeah, that's me, or there's this sense of embracing, like I'm this way. The other thing that you offer is this, I feel like small drips of information about it because it is kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. And so with the Instagram account, my hope is that it's a gateway, it's an access point to this really in-depth, big, really kind of dark, hard work in some ways, because you're looking at your shadow. You're looking at the parts of yourself that maybe you're not the most proud of. Honestly, and for some people, for the very first time in their lives. Um, and and so this gives you that access point. And what I hope to do is kind of bring a little bit of lightness to that so that it feels more accessible, and then kind of gives us like, it's like holding your hand into the dark work, into the hard work. And then that hard work doesn't have to feel so hard. It can just feel like understanding, and that understanding can breathe life back into you instead of it feeling like, oh, now I have to look at this stuff and deal with my pain and my shame and my,
So if someone is wanting to find out what type they are, how do you suggest that they go about doing that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of online tests, and my favorite test is at integrative9.com. That's a good place to start, except the problem is, if you take the Myers-Briggs or something like that, it's going to give you a result, and then you're going to know what your type is. It's not the same way with the Enneagram. The Enneagram is so internal, and they're going to ask you questions, and you're going to answer sometimes based off of what you are, and then sometimes based off of what you think you're supposed to be. And it's hard to distinguish in a test format which is accurate. And so what most people need to do is take that test, get a starting understanding, but then go in and read about the types, read about each type, because once you read your number, it's really alarming how well you feel seen.
Right. I remember I was working with a life coach, Barb Elias, and she said to me, I think this would be worth you looking into, like taking this. And the first time I took it, I was a 7. And the second time I took it, I was a 2. And I always kind of sit between those two if I go back and look at it and even read up on it. So I sometimes hear you also describing, like, is it a wing or something? And do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so each number it's a circle, like the graphic for the Enneagram is a circle. And so each number has 2 numbers on either side of them. So for a 2, you're going to have 1 on one side of you and 3 on the other side of you. And you're going to pull from one of those and kind of adopt some of their personality traits to complement and round out your dominant personality type. So what that can look like for 2 as the helper is that they're very service-oriented, very heart-centered, very emotional, and they're going to pull in sometimes from that 3, who's a little bit more of a driver, a lot more achievement-oriented, and that's going to round out their personality a little bit and give them some additional skills and personality traits. And so that's super interesting. So sometimes you might see, oh, I feel like this one and this one. There's a lot of common mistypes. So you might read up on 2 and 7 and resonate with both of them, which I definitely did in my starting point. And really what I say for that, if you're trying to decide between 2 that aren't really connected on the graphic, is to say, like, to really be honest as physically possible with yourself about which motivator you would choose over the other. Excuse me. So for 2, their motivation is that they want to feel worthy of love. A 7's motivation is that they want to feel beyond, like they don't want to get trapped in emotional pain. And if you have to be really honest with yourself about whether you would rather feel loved or if you would rather feel free, then you get to choose, that becomes a little bit easier to distinguish for ourselves. My kind of uncomfortable example of this in my own life is that for a long time, I was deciding between 7 and 1. And 1's basic desire is that they want to be good. They want to do the right thing. They want to be above reproach. 7's is they want to feel free. They want to feel independent. They want to be never trapped in emotional pain. They always want to be happy. And I had to be honest with myself, like, would I choose being a good person or being free and happy? And I would choose being free and happy.
Right. Okay. And that's hard. Like, it's hard.
Hard to
Like, you want to
say.
be both things. Do you have sort of a summary like you just did now for some 2, 1, and 7? Do you have a summary like going through all of the numbers? Here's like the Cole's Notes version and knowing that it's very in depth.
Yeah. I'll give you guys like the tip of the iceberg. So for 1's, that is, you want to be good. You want to be above reproach. 2's, you want to be worthy of love, and you seek that love by being helpful and serving other people. 3's, they want to be worthy, and they want to be, they fear failure. And so they focus a lot on achievement and moving their way to the top of their group or their surrounding environment. So they can be kind of competitive or constantly gauging where they are in relationship to their peers and always wanting to rise to the top. Type 4 is the individualist, and they're very romantic, very creative. They're very emotionally in tune. They are interested in being different or set apart from other people, but in the same way, they also have always felt like they are somehow different than other people, like the black sheep. Then we have type 5, which is the investigator. So they are very observant, very aware of their surroundings. They're very research oriented. They kind of have this feeling, their biggest fear is that they're incapable. And so they use research and knowledge and the acquiring of knowledge in order to fill that space and therefore to feel capable. Like they need to know everything about a topic in order to feel like they are qualified to speak on that topic. Then we have type 6, which is the loyalist. They are they're focused on their own safety and security. They worry a lot about worst case scenarios, what could go wrong. They're very good planners. They're very good at creating systems that support an organization or a group. And they're very loyal to organizations and groups, but they're also very skeptical. So they kind of have this, before you are in and you're welcome, I'm going to be very skeptical of you, but once you're in, and I will go to the battle for you. I will go to the mat for you. Then type 7 is the enthusiast. They are focused on not being trapped in emotional pain. They're very focused on freedom, positivity. They're very good at reframing things into positives. So, your car breaks down. It's like, yeah, but if your car didn't break down, then you wouldn't have made $1 million. Like, this is probably on your path to your greatest achievements. They're very future oriented, focused on like all the positive things that will happen in the future down the road. And then we have type 8, which is the challenger. And type 8 is primarily oriented around not wanting to be controlled. And so what that can often look like is someone who wants to control an environment. But the reality is they just don't want anyone telling them what to do or controlling them. They also, they're very honest and blunt, and that can make them appear and be very conflict forward, like very direct, cut to the chase. They can kind of offend people by accident, I believe, by just speaking their truth because they don't think truth should hurt feelings. And they are very good at delegating. They can go into a room, they can see what your weak spots are, what your strengths are, and are quick to take charge and kind of lead people in that way. Then finally, we have type 9, which is the peacemaker. And the peacemaker is kind of at the top of the Enneagram. We call them like the crown of the Enneagram. And what they're really amazing at is seeing all perspectives. And so a lot of times with a 9, you're not going to know you're a 9 because you're going to resonate with every number except for being a 9. 9's primary motivation is peace of mind. And so they are very conflict averse because their primary objective in any situation is to find potential conflict and squelch it before it can happen. So what that can often look like is making themselves very small and like invisible almost, not expressing their own opinions. It can look like trying to mend relationships or playing mediator so that everything just stays very chill. And that's the 9.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that summary.
Yeah, it's very fun.
So do you sometimes hear from people who are either taking the Enneagram or people who are talking about it? Do you hear them talking about how to change yourself if you're this way, or how to challenge sort of the dark side of things?
Yeah. And so I'm very cautious with the Enneagram to express it in a way that is all about acceptance and self-compassion, because I think that we get to choose when we pick up a tool like this, if we're going to use it for self-discipline or self-harm even, or if we're going to use it for self-compassion and self-understanding. And I think that all tools are neutral, and we get to make them proactive, or we make them like non-positive for ourselves. And so I think there's a common relationship to the Enneagram that says, I'm this number. This number is bad. I should look like another number. And I should change myself so that I'm more closely resemble someone else, and something else. And my work with the Enneagram is so much more about how can we look at ourselves honestly, see the essence of what we are as beauty, and then notice, like, what are these behaviors that I tend to bring in sometimes that keep me from that truest version of myself? And how can I see those as things that kind of muddy me up a little bit, and just clean that away, and but stay true to who I am and what I bring to the world, because we need all 9 numbers.
Right. So using this as a tool, and I can already hear it sounds like your 7 enables you to kind of look for the positive in this tool. So seeing this tool, how do you think it can help us as business owners, entrepreneurs, because that's what yoga teachers are? How do you see it helping fellow entrepreneurs?
So this is my favorite thing to talk about with the Enneagram, because I think, I've been in business for so long, and I've talked to so many business owners, and so having the conversation around that plus the Enneagram is kind of my dream. But with that, I think that there's 2 things to keep in mind. Number 1 is knowing what's going to stand in your way. This gives you the chance to see, here are my self-defeating behaviors, and here's what's going to continuously show up for me. And so I just need being prepared for that, knowing yourself intimately enough to know, this is what shows up for me, trying to hold me back, trying to keep me small. And if I let those win, I'm not shining my brightest. And so holding awareness for that is 1. And then number 2 is working with yourself. So often we are taught, business strategy, and we're taught, how to run our business, how to be productive, how to show up each day as business owners from the perspective of very specific numbers. So like type 3, type 7, type 8, type 1 are all like kind of what our society says you're supposed to be as a business owner. Now, if you're a type 4 who's like romantic, creative, emotional, you're going to feel kind of steamrolled by the business practices that you're continuously taught. It's going to feel like you will never measure up. And so what I suggest you do through the learning of the Enneagram as a business owner is really say, who am I? What do I bring to the table that is unique in this way? Then what are those things that get in my way, that prevent me from truly stepping into my authority? And then how can I hold compassion for who I am, set up, support plans for my weaknesses, and then really let my strengths shine. So an example of this for me as a 7 is that as a 7, what I'm really good at is doing a lot of things. I just do it that is my autopilot. Now, what I need to be aware of is that one of my self-defeating patterns is doing new things without letting old things really mature. And so I have to, it's like my practice of like, 1, bring the awareness of, I have this tendency. So how can I, create a support plan to make sure that those old things can mature. So that means, I hired my husband who comes in and he runs the day to day so that I can like project the future and like plan for new things without like dropping the ball on all the old things. So for a 7, you might need a support team. You might need someone to come in and run kind of the mundane tasks of your business. And then the other thing to know though is that like it's a superpower to be able to just do a bunch of things and to help people to believe in themselves and to move forward, to push past fear. And so if I can truly step into that and let that shine, then my business is going to flourish so much more than if I try to squelch that skill in myself.
Oh, that's really important that we're still looking at this is like a superpower. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each number has theirs.
Yeah. Do you think that you could kind of type yoga teachers if you were like, oh, the majority of yoga teachers are probably this number?
Yeah, I would say most yoga teachers, I would imagine, and I think that I think it's more about the thing that drove you to become a yoga teacher is probably more, because I think you could find a reason that each number would become a yoga teacher. But I would say it's very likely that a large portion of your listeners are going to be 9s and 2s, which are like the peacemakers. They're very like empathic, intuitive, calm. Then 2s, which are like the helpers, the lovers, very warm and welcoming. However, I can see a world where being a 7 would be really attractive, being a yoga teacher as a 7, because it's kind of our cure. Like as a 7, it's not my natural tendency to slow down that much, but it is breathes so much life into me. And it is my balance. It is what I need to support myself in that, like slowing down, sitting with my emotions, being comfortable with the fact that I'm not moving at 100 miles per hour.
Right. Oh, this is interesting. So for the 9s and the 2s, what do you think? How could it kind of come out of balance for them in a small business or being an entrepreneur? And what is sort of their superpower that they should be more focused on?
Yeah. So 2s and 9s are both very human oriented. And so what they're likely to really thrive at is the showing up and being present on the day of. And what they're likely to to lose track of is all of the back end work. So, responding to emails, charging appropriately, putting yourself out there in front of like new studios, trying to grow in an upward trajectory so that your income is growing with your export. So 2s and 9s are very quick to say yes, and very quick to say yes for less than what they deserve. And so they're more likely to be underpaid and overworked. And so their awareness is going to have to be around, how can I set a really good boundary here? How can I determine ahead of time, like what I want my salary to look like, how many vacation days off I want a year, and how can I charge appropriately to make that work for me, and ask for that and feel comfortable asking for that. And only saying yes when it is a hell yes. And then if it's not a hell yes, then say no. And that takes so much practice for both 9s and 2s. It is a lifetime of reminding yourself and working on that. And then also using systems like HoneyBook, or like if you have private clients, like making sure you're using systems that support you on the back end so that you're not trying to juggle a bunch of emails and tasks and things that don't, or having someone who does a VA or someone who does that for you so that you can be human facing and doing the work that you do really well.
Right. Oh, I love this, that we start to look at our team.
Mm-hmm.
Would you suggest that if we were building a team, then we get them to take the Enneagram?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell everybody to do that, because you can hire someone who's complementary to you. Like as a 7, I know that one of my next hires is a 6 because they are systems oriented, they're loyal, they're follow through oriented, and I'm a quick yes and a very quick oops, what have I done? I'm going to back out of this. And a 6 is going to be like, before I ever say the yes, they're going to think through, well, what if this happens? Or have you thought about this thing? Have you questioned this? Which my 7 brain doesn't. It just like, it's already 10 years ahead.
I love it. I want to switch gears for a moment and just chat about your Instagram account and the Enneagram and Coffee Instagram account. So I found you on Instagram. I am certain it was through Tyler McCall. So we've already had Tyler on the podcast talking about Instagram and strategy.
Yeah.
And what I saw, and I'd love for you to explain, is I saw you had a really great following and then you started Enneagram and Coffee and it blew up. What did it feel like? And what do you think caused that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had my Sarajane Case account, which I still like, I love. It feels like home for me on Instagram. Um, and, and then I started Enneagram and Coffee, and it's been I started it in December. So it's been maybe 2 months, and or maybe almost to the day that we're recording this. But it's been about 2 months and it's at 232,000.
Yeah.
It blew up to over 100,000 in 3 days. I was like mind blown. I had no idea that was going to happen. I wasn't prepared for that at all. And it was just one of those moments where I feel like, my alignment with what I wanted to be talking about was aligning with what my audience wanted me to be talking about and what the universe had for me in store. And it just kind of like came together. But in that, there's a little bit of whiplash. And I talk to my clients about this all the time. I'm like, you have up-level whiplash, which is like you step into the next phase of your life and you're like, oh no, what have I done? Everything's falling apart. Where am I? What am I doing? And like, it feels like almost more terrifying than it felt to be comfortable and to not take that step. And that's 100% how it felt to me. I can like remember my husband was like worried about me. He was like, because I was like crying and like stressed and like uncomfortable. And he, he texted my friends who had like gone viral in the past and was like, hey, can you like speak into her? Because she's like freaked out right now. And what was freaked out for me was just like, I now have all of these eyes on me and all of these opinions. And what if I'm not equipped? Like what if I'm not the person? And that's just like old story that we carry around with us. And it just is always good. There's going to be like, it's like putting on new skin, it's not fun. It's not comfortable, but it's part of it. And I think I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do at this point if I hadn't really allowed myself to experience the full range of like, what am I doing? That comes up. I say that, and I still will say, because, Enneagram and Coffee isn't a personal brand. So Sarajane Case is a personal brand. And with that comes some comfort, and there comes like people interacting with me as a human person. They get invested in me. They get invested in my story. We have a relationship with each other. So to this day, Sarajane Case has 17,000 followers, and that was so big for me before. But now it feels like home. Like it feels like, oh, these people know me and they care about me and I care about them and I know them by name, versus at Enneagram and Coffee. It's like, I'm kind of a machine to them over there because there's not as much of a human face behind it. And so people who maybe feel triggered or feel offended by something, they're quick to jump on. And kind of not realize that like their words are going to a person. And that does not happen over at Sarajane, like on my account, Sarajane Case. And so that's just a learning curve of just, oh yeah, like they don't see me, they see me as a robot, like a machine. Right. And that's just part of it, and what's helped me with that, and I don't have to talk about this for the rest of my life, but what's helped me with that is reading larger accounts, their comments as well, and seeing like, oh, these people that I admire are getting feedback too. And you just kind of have to move on from it. Realize it has nothing to do with you. They were triggered. They're having some experience over there on their end. It really has nothing to do with me. And unfortunately, I was the receptacle for that, but it's not mine.
Not personal. I love that you just shared that, this really fast growth, which I think we're all dreaming of as entrepreneurs sometimes, or like, I'm going to make it big and it will be amazing. You said it was pretty tough for 3 days there when you saw everything growing. And also then comes, if you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of fans, you're going to also get so many different personalities commenting on your stuff. And it's a different vibe. Oh, that's interesting. I also want to ask you on your own personal and the Sarajane Case, I do feel like it's really easy to get to know you on there. Do you want to share, like, do you feel like that sharing of your personal life has helped to build that Instagram account? Do you feel like that's one of the things, or what works well over there and why do you think it does?
Yeah. I think that I definitely lead with, um, how can I benefit the people who are here? Like, if you have agreed to follow me, I want to make sure that I'm leaving you better than you found me, and that our relationship is a positive one in your life. And so I think that that's a big part of the reason that it works. But I think that that's also the reason I feel secure enough to share more and more in my life with you all, because um, if I'm sharing honestly and vulnerably and it isn't for you, you're more likely to just unfollow versus and so then I know that, okay, this 17,000, like, they're here and we're here together and we have a dynamic and we're forming a relationship here versus it's just like me talking into the void and hoping that they're into it. It's like we're creating a dynamic. I'm opening myself up to you, then you can open yourself up to me. And like a really good conversation, there's a back and forth there.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that your business is mainly, your main platform is Instagram?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think for anyone who is feeling like, oh, I have to do a website, I have to have my blog, or, whatever it is, sometimes no. Sometimes it's like, find where you're comfortable and hang out there.
Yeah.
Find your
And
people there.
honestly, like, my current website is not even up to date. Like, I'll create landing pages for like different offers, but the website itself it's not currently relevant. And I'm like, well, I can't really, that's not where my energy needs to go right now, because my energy needs to go to these other things. And I think that sometimes people think I need to spend 3,000-4,000 on my website and then I can worry about Instagram. When in reality, you need to start building your community. And then from there, they will pay for your website.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. Where would you suggest someone goes? Let's see if we can come up with some resources. So there's the test that you suggested. What about a book? Do you have a favorite book on the Enneagram?
I do. The Road Back to You is my favorite starter book for anyone getting adjusted to the Enneagram and starting out.
Okay. And podcasts? I feel like you have a podcast on the Enneagram.
I do, Enneagram and Coffee, and that will go through kind of the intros to the Enneagram, how to type yourself. I break down all these things. And then I also do like advice style episodes and interview style episodes. And then there's Typology, which is also a really good Enneagram podcast.
And your Instagram account. And then you also just recently did the Enneagram Summit. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes. I am so excited about the Enneagram Summit because I was able to interview 39 different, like, amazing people with these incredible skills. So half of them are Enneagram experts. They're talking about Enneagram and relationships, Enneagram and work, Enneagram and parenting, Enneagram and your relationship to yourself, how to type yourself, all of these workshops. And then I interviewed 2 to 3 different people of each Enneagram number who are doing amazing things in their careers, and talked to them about how they work with themselves as their number, what life is like as their number, and then how they've pushed through it. So I think that all of the workshops are really impactful, but I think there's something super powerful about listening to people who have similar coping mechanisms, similar drivers, talking about, how they orient in the world and how they've learned to work with themselves and hold compassion for who they are.
Great. So we'll put a link to that summit in our show notes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with if they're thinking about doing their Enneagram, or maybe they've done it? Like, here's one thing for me. I did it and I felt like it was a pile of reading and I kind of put it on the back burner.
Yeah. It definitely is. This is a journey that you're going on with yourself. So don't think of this as something that you take a test, you get an answer, you read a paragraph, and then now you know. Definitely. And it might not be time. You know what I mean? Like if you're not ready to do this, it might not be time for you, but know that this tool exists for you when you're ready. And when you are ready, what that's going to look like is it's going to be essentially studying yourself like you are worth paying attention to and saying, you know what, like you're interesting. I want to know about you. I want to know what drives you. I want to know what you're scared of. I want to know, what can make you shine to the truest version of yourself. And what that's going to look like is a little bit of time and effort and research. And I think Road Back to You is a really good place to start. That book, my podcast is a really good place to start. The summit is another really good place to start. And I would say all of those are really, there's 3 different learning styles. So if you're a reader and you learn, if you're an audible learner, then do the podcast. If you're a reader, do the book. And if video interviews are a lot more suited to you, then do the summit. And just read up and learn because you're so worth the attention.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's a big piece of yoga for us to do this svadhyaya, that self-study work. So I'm curious if there are any yoga teachers then starting to offer like an Enneagram and yoga retreat. How amazing would that be?
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Sarajane.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy.
Well, Connected Yoga teachers, how was that? What do you feel like you learned? Thank you so much again, Sarajane, for all of your wisdom, your ability to just show up and really be open about how you share in the world and really how you teach us to use a tool like the Enneagram to be compassionate to self. I'm excited to hear, Connected Yoga teachers, if you have taken the Enneagram assessment and you know what number you are, let's have a little discussion in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group. If you're wondering what that is, you can head on over to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look for the join button. Our Facebook group is a super supportive place for you to ask questions, look for resources. We're a group of over 6,000 yoga teachers from around the world, and we would love to have you in there if you're not there already. If you have time to meet up in person and you want to learn about yoga for pelvic health, I am going to be in Meaford, Ontario, November 2nd, 3rd, 2019. All of the information for that is on theconnectedyogateacher.com under training and events. And if you can't make it in person, make sure to go and check out the new project that I'm really working on called Pelvic Health Professionals. So if you go to pelvichealthprofessionals.com, you will see all of the articles and podcasts that I've done in the past on pelvic health. And you will see that I'm starting a membership site where I really have this vision of bringing yoga teachers and other pelvic health professionals together in this way that we can really collaborate and share information. I'm really excited about that. As I'm recording here now, it is the day that I launched it to some people who have studied with me. So kind of a beta soft launch just to get it out there and to work out the kinks. And in August, the doors are going to open to everyone. So again, go to pelvichealthprofessionals.com. I want to give a special shout out to Sherry Longbottom. Sherry, it is so great to read your comments on Facebook. Sherry recently sent a comment to let me know that she really loved the podcast episode with Yael. And I asked her what she loved about her. She said so many things. She said the questions you asked, the caring, honest, real answers from Yael, and the wonderful information. And then she said, I'm going to check out the platform and love so much Yael's reasons for why this is needed and how much it truly helps those around the world and those who may not want to leave their homes for studios. So Sherry is talking about an episode that Yael and I did on Fit My Time. That's an online platform where you get matched with a yoga teacher, and I'll make sure to link to that episode in the show notes. We've gotten a lot of feedback about that episode, so if you want to go and check it out, make sure you do that. It's the time in the show when I need to say some thank yous, mainly to our team, Samantha, Suzanne, Crunch, and Cindy. Thank you so much for making today's episode possible, as well as many other things. Thank you also, dear yoga teachers. As I said, you are out there doing the important work, and I hope that this podcast can offer you some comfort and make you feel like you're supported in this journey. You are doing amazing work, and you're not always going to hear a thank you from your students, and you're not always going to know the impact that you're having. Just think back to where Sarajane was saying at the very beginning of today's interview, the impact that yoga teacher had with her and how the yoga teacher probably never knew. So as I sign off right now, I'd like to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?